Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
During these times, we tend to forget how important it is to foster and promote a sense of community, especially like somewhere in the film business where the act of watching movies has kind of been taken away from us. Or has it? But, and if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with once again. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I am the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and not only pick their brain about current projects, but also talk to them about what got them into the industry, what got everything started, sort of state of things going forward, and all that kind of fun stuff. And if you need to subscribe to us, please don't hesitate to subscribe to the podcast either over on Apple, over on Spotify, or you can find everything archived over at our YouTube channel. If you'd like to follow us on social media, we'd really appreciate that too. Please check us out on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram, either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, please visit us where it all began, over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest movie news, reviews, from festivals, from films all across the world, all sorts of fun stuff. But on this episode, we are talking very much about community. And especially during these days of COVID lockdowns where we can't go to the movies, we've lost the ability to sort of watch things together and sort of talk about them and enjoy and sort of appreciate the art form and the issues that they can bring up, but no longer, because there is something out there that is kind of allowing that experience to come to the virtual space, and it's called Hoovie. And if you look it up online at hoovie.movie, and we are talking with co-founder Fiona Rayher and their head of business development Tom Wynn about just sort of the development of the platform, their hopes and goals for it going forward, what got them started, how they've pivoted to the virtual and the digital realm in the middle of COVID, and how they see all this going forward. And it was a pretty interesting talk with a couple of really interesting people, and I hope you enjoy. All right. Now, obviously, first off, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate you guys giving me the time today. And I love the idea behind the platform, because in the back of my mind, it feels like one of those things that maybe people talked about, and in 5-6 years, maybe we'll develop something, this will happen down the line. And then COVID happened, and it feels like everything kind of got sped up. Can you walk me through sort of not just the initial idea, but the timeline to sort of get this going?
As you probably know, David, Hoovie started out as very much an Airbnb for film screenings platform. It still is in many ways. However, before COVID, we were very much an offline events screening platform that made it easy for people to host film screenings in homes and backyards and rooftops and storefronts and you name it. And the whole idea was to bring people together in intimate groups so that they could actually connect using film as a vehicle. And then COVID hit and we pivoted like everyone else on the planet. And at first it was pretty sad for us because these offline events were truly quite magical as a community building tool and a tool to alleviate loneliness, which is, as you might know, a real issue in Vancouver, which is
for sure
deemed one of the loneliest cities in the world. But then we thought about it and we were like, we actually have a huge responsibility to be a part of this shift to the virtual space and make it much more meaningful and authentic than it is. And so that's really our mission right now, is to build this social cinema platform that enables people to connect in meaningful ways and really find each other using film as a tool. Does that answer question?
No, absolutely. But I mean, I'm also just very curious on sort of what was the initial spark for the whole
Oh,
process really as well.
right. So I used to make films, and in 2016, I guess, I was releasing a film called Fractured Land, which is a coming of age story about a young Indigenous lawyer working to expose the gas industry in northern BC. And we were in theaters and festivals and TV and all that jazz, but we really wanted people in these northern communities to see the film and experience the film in ways that people down south could. However, there's no theaters in these communities, and not great Wi-Fi, and a lot of folks didn't have documentary channel. And so we raised a bit of money from Lush Cosmetics and organized this grassroots screening tour. And what happened is, all across the province, actually, people just started hosting our film in all these unusual spaces, like homes and
Okay.
outdoor spaces. And it was such a magical experience watching our film be consumed in this way, and watching people actually really find each other, using through our film, and form relationships. And so that was the first aha moment for me. Of course, it took many years after I to actually get it going, but yeah, the first spark was through distributing Fractured Land. And then the second aha moment was when I was working with the city of Vancouver on this loneliness and social isolation project. I actually had a little agency while I was filmmaking, because you can't pay the bills when you're filmmaking.
Right.
I'm stereotyping, but for me anyways, that was the case. So through this contract, I learned a lot about loneliness in urban spaces. And so that was the second aha moment. I was like, oh, this thing that's brewing in my brain was a real antidote for loneliness and people not knowing their neighbors, and so on and so forth. And then the third aha moment was realizing that there's all of these platforms in the music industry that bring live music into intimate private spaces, like at scale, like and venture backed, and making a huge splash in the arts and culture space, and that actually this is the way that young people in particular want to experience arts and culture. Where like people are tired of big stadiums, and so I was like, people are also getting tired of big box cinemas. I don't think that that's the way people want to experience cinema anymore. And there's just nothing out there that gives them what they want. And so all those things combined sparked the idea for Hoovie. And eventually I moved to New York City, raised a bit of money, started working with Hillary Henniger, who eventually became my co-founder. And we built a prototype and started building community through Hoovie.
Now, when you're developing the idea, because obviously the idea is great and an idea is one thing, but without content, it's not really going to go anywhere. Can you guys walk me through? I mean, I don't want to say fear or, hesitation on the industry to maybe sort of embrace it, but I got to imagine that given your first pitch to a studio or a distributor may have been a little bit of, there may have been a little awkward or a little bit of pushback when they didn't necessarily quite understand what the whole concept is.
Yeah, I mean, it took a while to get beyond like 2 films. Like we had 2 films in our catalog for more time than I'd like to admit. Yeah, I'd say like there's 2 distributors in Canada who I feel like I owe everything to. Films We Like, and they're our dear friends, and also Keno Smith, and Stocks, Robin Smith has been a real ally. And without those guys, like I don't know where we'd be, to be honest. And I think from here, when we talk to distributors and filmmakers, it's much easier now. Sorry, I'm just gonna.
No problem. But I mean, it does speak to a really interesting point that when you have to sort of not only develop the system, but try to pitch people on content, getting that first foot in the door has got to be supremely difficult. And I'm kind of curious for you guys, like I guess really what I want to ask is I'm so curious about try to walk me through the steps of, say, for example, if I wanted to host my own thing, how would I go about doing that?
So
on the one side,
go ahead, Tom. You can feel free to take this one.
okay. Just in terms of content, what we pitch potential content, like when there's a film rights holder that wants to bring their film into Hoovie, we're able to offer them much more than just a streaming platform. That's kind of central to what Hoovie's all about, frankly. The connection between the audience members is as important to us as the content being shown. And that's the thing that we're now moving to the online space, right? And that's what we've been built. That's what the brand has built over the last couple of years, is the idea that the connection between the people who attend, that's where the magic happens. And so what we can offer catalog partners is not just a platform where they can show their movie online, but we can actually offer them a venue through which people are actually getting to talk about their film. We offer filmmakers, actual fans and not just views, right, through our platform, which I think is a little bit different than something like Netflix. I'm sure you've heard of Netflix Party, for instance,
right?
Which is like this. But the reality is that's just a streaming video with a chat window on the side of it. That doesn't. That maybe it takes the first baby step towards connecting the audience members together, and it may work well for a trashy reality show. But if you're trying to hold a deep conversation about an important issue, which is central to the film that you've all just shared, you need more time, you need more tools, you need more interactivity in the platform that you're doing, right? And that's what we're building, and that's what we offer people who want to join the Hoovie catalog,
Well, and this really does feel like an opportunity to sort of recapture almost the film festival experience in some ways, because there is film community out there, and it is an important part of just sort of the film landscape. And just with everything that has happened, it has kind of been lost, and people are looking to sort of recreate that. And I'm kind of curious, sort of mid the pivot, did you see, was the window sort of self-evident to sort of be able to sort of create this new environment, or just sort of recreate the environment that we seemingly have lost right now, given everything that's going on?
It should be told. It should be said that this is a direction that Hoovie has been planning on before the pandemic.
Right.
We'd always planned to make this transition, or at least to offer online as a major channel to our customers, right? Of course, the pandemic accelerated that. But I will also say that beyond the pandemic, even after it's over, whoever figures out how to approximate this online experience, like whoever figures out how to offer an online, experience that is really deep and robust, is going to end up like really succeeding even after the pandemic is over, because online video is the dominant way through which people consume content now. That's not going to change even after the pandemic is over, right? And so we're going to, if all goes according to plan, Hoovie is going to be at the vanguard of being able to offer like a user experience that goes a lot further than anything else that's available online to people now. And I think that's important to mention, that we're not just doing this because of the pandemic. This is something, this is something that was planned, that we had in the works for a while. It's accelerated our plans, and we're going to continue to do it after it's over, and do it very well.
What is it about the concept of film community, which seemed like such a perfect in? Because I mean, I can even only speak from personal experience, because there is film community. When I would see a film with colleagues or even with friends, like we would be outside the theater talking about it, and a lot of that gets missed and separated as sort of almost an afterthought. But it really is such a huge part of the movie going experience. And I'm kind of curious, from both of your perspectives, what is it about Hoovie that manages to sort of not just make an optimal experience for the film fan, but really sort of speak to those issues of loneliness and of sort of the lack of community that we're all feeling right now?
Well, yeah, I think, like number one for us is bringing people together in intimate, authentic ways. But the films themselves play a huge role in that. So all of our films in our catalog are conversation sparking, and that actually inspire people to stick around. So whether be it, if they're the type of films that you would stick around outside a movie theater and have a conversation in a group. We're just doing that virtually now, and eventually we will have living room screenings again. They'll just be more of like a premium product, but we're excited for when we're able to, because that's going to be another way in which we're very different from all these other platforms. But yeah, I think like these other platforms that Tom has mentioned, they're like, some of them do allow you to converse with other people through video, but it's like Disney movies, and we offer something that is much more intellectually charged in a lot of ways. And on a side note, like, I don't know if you feel this way, David, but I feel completely overwhelmed by the choices.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
When it comes to cinema and content, and we get really easy for people to choose, so that they can get to the community building much more quickly. So yeah, that's yeah.
And just to build on that fact, just to build on Fiona's point, what we do now and what we are developing even further is kind of a response to what we're trying to get across, is that what Hoovie's developing is a user experience, to build on what Fiona was just saying, is we're building a user experience which we hope is going to leave the user, the attendee, stimulated and energized from the experience, from watching a film and having a good conversation at the end of it, instead of exhausted and fatigued, which is what we're all now. And I think that's a critical distinction in terms of like what the Hoovie experience leaves you with. This is what happens in real life when you're finished with the Hoovie. You're like you're beaming, because you've just connected to all these people that you didn't know, and you've exchanged ideas in a really great civil discourse, and you've been able to talk about things that you don't normally have a forum to talk about. We're replicating that on the online space, so that way our attendees come away from that experience, again, not feeling exhausted like what happens after a 2-hour Zoom call, right, but they feel really good and they want to keep doing it. And I think that's a critical distinction between what we're building and what I think some of the other co-watching platforms have failed to do, because they haven't taken into account those sort of, the emotional aspects of co-watching as it exists today.
No, and I mean, cinema is a moving experience, and it can be even more moving when you're sharing that with other people. Now, I guess, walk me through the actual process. Like, if I want to host something virtually in a virtual space, tell me what I would have to do. Is there a cost outlay to me? What is the actual breakdown of the steps to go through the entire process?
There's no cost, because we actually want to keep the community building accessible. They pay to build community. Right. As the host, yeah. It's also how that sets us apart is contrast to a lot of other ways in which people access content to public screenings. They have to pay, as you probably know,
right,
$300, $400, $500, and a lot of that's a barrier for a lot of people, and so we don't want to do that. So no, you don't have to pay. So how it works is you would choose a film from our catalog. You set your date, your time, your capacity. A lot of people cap their screenings to like 12 people, just because it's hard to have a conversation with more than 12 people. For offline events, it was more, maybe more like 20. However, there were larger events, like we had this one screening, for example, at Nada Zero Waste grocery store, and that was over 100 people. So there's outliers, but in any case, choose your film, set all your event details, just like, and any event through Eventbrite or what have you. You set your venue details if it were an offline event, just like Airbnb. And you share the event with your friends, your network, and we also share it with our network. And inevitably you would have some of your own friends that would show up, and some like-minded people who probably care about the same issue or subject matter or genre or whatever that you do, So you would have, maybe five of your friends or friends of friends, and then maybe 7 or so of people who also love horror films, and you just like jam about horror films and this particular story for half an hour after the film. And like Tom was saying, you go to bed really energized. You're like, that was awesome. I just like met all these really cool people, and we're going to go out for drinks next week. And as a guest, it's you would just buy a ticket. It's really quite easy. And you, and then the other thing is the host sets the ticket price above a minimum. Yeah. And so as the host, there's 2 options in terms of revenue breakdown. Most people don't care about making money as a host. Oftentimes people, just they want to build social capital. They want to build community. They're not doing this for money. So most of the ticket breakdowns are 60% for the film rights holder and 40% to Hoovie.
Okay.
As you might know, 60% is quite high, which is really important to us, that we're putting revenue back into filmmakers' pockets that actually enables them to make a living. And however, if you're, say, an organization and you want to fundraise for your organization or a cause, or maybe you're a person who's laid off due to COVID, you can choose a stream where you make money as a host. So you make 30% per ticket, we make 30%, and the film rights holder makes 40%.
And I mean, that's a good thing, because I mean, especially the films in your catalog, these aren't exactly films that did, big bonzo box office. They're little independent films, and those are the kind of films that struggle for any kind of audience that they can get. So really any and every drop in the bucket is important to those filmmakers. You're absolutely right.
Totally. Yeah. And the other thing to mention is in either scenario, you as a host can fundraise for a cause through adding an additional donation field. So, if you're hosting a film about the environment, you can add a field that donates to Greenpeace as well. So that's another way in which we differentiate from other platforms, is our ability for people in community to raise money using film as a tool.
Why do you think film is such an effective tool in terms of building community? Because we see it across issues, and we see it across just everyday life, with people sort of bonding over sort of that shared experience. What is it about film in particular, from both your perspectives, that you really think is sort of such a driving factor in sort of the spirit of community?
Well, I would say film is an inherently emotional experience, right? I mean, films, especially the kinds of films that have been, handpicked and curated on Hoovie's catalog, are especially emotional, and so it's the perfect vehicle to share with other people. Back in the days when we could be within 6 feet of each other, going to a movie with your friends, and then going to a cafe afterwards or a bar or something and talking about it was like one of the best ways that you could bond with people, right? And so, when Fiona started the company, realizing that there were other ways to replicate that experience in living rooms and, in parks and anywhere really, it lent itself very well to that. And for the last 2 years, we've kind of perfected the formula to do that. So that's what I would say, is that like film is the perfect vehicle because it's an emotional medium.
Mm-hmm. And it evokes more senses than, say, music. I mean, I love music, but arguably, gathering together in an intimate space and watching a show is not, in my opinion, is not going to inspire conversation like a film would. And so that was actually a big reason as to why I started Hoovie, because I was like, well, that's really amazing what the music industry is doing, but man, talk about the conversation that could spark if there were a screen and a projector and an amazing film in the room instead. So, you know, like for me, it's quite sad that there's all of these incredible films that don't see the light of day, and that have so much potential to spark civic engagement and bring people together and really create change, like actually like change. Like there's films that have like changed policy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And inspire students to be something better than they would if they hadn't seen. Like, I mean, that was my experience. Is I didn't study film. I was in university, and I was so bored. I'm surprised I didn't drop out. And then these professors showed me films, and it really like it got me through. And not only got me through it, me action that I literally wouldn't have gone if it weren't for these like handful of films that these professors showed me. So yeah, I mean, I'm biased, but I think film is like life-changing for people, not for individuals and for groups and for society at large.
How do you guys see Hoovie evolving? Because there's definitely, at least for me, as my perspective, as just purely as a film fan and somebody who appreciates sort of not just all different kinds of cinema, but sort of that community that comes out of that. How do you see this platform evolving over time?
Oh, that's the most exciting question.
Fiona? I mean, we want Hoovie to number one, bring people together, and number two, we want people to stay connected through Hoovie. We want Hoovie to become much more of a community than it currently is. I mean, it is a community, but we really want that to be the foundation. And from there, you know, I think there's a lot of ways in which Hoovie can go. Like we could incorporate, you know, other forms of art. Potentially, we could. There's a lot of opportunity to work with groups, with organizations and brands to really, you know, move society in a particular way, whether that be, you know, a campaign around something that's really important, and through which we would leverage this community that I just mentioned. So that's a pretty vague answer, I suppose, but yeah, we want to, like, we really want to be the number one platform for this social cinema. We believe that the future of cinema is social, and from there, real authentic community will be built that really, like at the end of the day, creates belonging. And I don't say that lightly. It's creating society where people feel like they belong is a long journey, and there's a lot of ways to get there, but that's the direction we want to head.
For sure. Now, I mean, this is probably a loaded question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. For you both, because I mean, I love how this idea of Hoovie and the concept and the platform really is encouraging the social aspect of it. And for both of you, can you boil it down to one movie that made you sort of appreciate the social aspect of cinema?
Well, I mean, let's see. I guess in terms of films like on Hoovie's catalog. Yeah.
No, I'm more of a personal, more of a personal answer for you, like going back in your life.
Oh, okay. Well, well, the first one that pops out to me is Werner Herzog's Cave of Forgotten Dreams, which I would love to see on the Hoovie platform, but I need a personalized introduction to Mr. Herzog. And that's just a documentary. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a really cool documentary about a cave that was discovered in France, a cave that was cut off from air and basically left these incredibly well preserved art drawings made by cavemen 30,000 years ago, and they looked like they were painted yesterday. And so it's just an amazing film, and it's a perfect conversation starter because for me, it's like, it got me thinking about human evolution and the degree to which we have evolved as a species versus not evolved as a species.
Right.
And the time frames that we're talking about in this film are unimaginable to us. 30,000 years ago, and it looks like it was spent, and the guy who painted it is way better than I'll ever be, you know. And it was, he did it. So that's the kind of conversation starter, because it does, so it has a subject matter, but it dovetails into all these other great conversations where you're going to get someone else who has an opposing opinion, and like, I want to hear that opinion, right? That kind of, like I said, that kind of civil discourse is something that Hoovie does very, very well. And so that would be a good example of a movie that brings people together and gets them talking.
What about you, Fiona?
So I've always been a big hip hop fan. I love like forms of arts and culture that anyone can access. Like hip hop is just, it's largely just a beat, right? So people in any community of any means can access this stream of expression. And so anyways, I one of the films in university that I saw in this class on social campaigning, it was a fourth year communications class, was called Favela Rising. It was shortlisted for an Academy Award a really long time ago. Anyways, it's about the power of music in this favela in Brazil, and about this. I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen the film, but this leader who I believe was part of a drug cartel, and then like did a complete personal 180 through the power of music, essentially. And it's really a film about youth empowerment. And what, interestingly enough, the director, I think lived in I think New York. I might be butchering this. Matt Mockery, I believe is his name, and made the film in Brazil, and then went back to New York and realized that there's all of these like street youth on his doorstep, and he's like, I'm making these films about, you know, all these places that I don't really at the end of the day know anything about, and I don't have lived experience in. So like, that's great, but what, like, I should be focusing locally on all of these youth, you know, supporting all of these youth literally at my doorstep. And so he started a foundation to support at-risk youth in New York, and I think New York. And so that's really like, it's an example of Favela Rising. It's not just a film. Favela Rising is a seed that sparked this guy doing all of these other things and having all these other tentacles in life that created social change.
Well, you know what? And I mean, I think that a platform like Hoovie really could have the potential to spark so much change, not just socially, but just, you know, more importantly, between people, which is one of those really important things that we tend to forget about sometimes. And I think this is really a beautiful thing you guys are doing. And I just want to say thank you for the time again.
Oh, thank you.
And what we're just one point on that, you know, it's not just like after the film ends and then a whole bunch of faces pop up on the Zoom call and then everyone looks at each other wondering what to do. You know, I think that's an important thing that we also wanted to mention, is that the conversation is going to be kind of a guided experience. We're going to help our users like get through the process of having a really rich and rewarding conversation. So they're not like stuck like deer in the headlights. I mean, I don't know if you've ever like moderated a book club meeting, but sometimes it's like, okay, what do you guys want to talk about? You know, which may be kind of awkward to start. And what Hoovie has is and has built through you know, like testing and doing this for several years, is a way to make it easy for those people to break the ice and to have those conversations. So we have the great films, we have a really good process afterwards, and then we're building the tools to make it happen. So just thought I'd mention that, because that's actually quite key to creating that positive user experience is a little bit of guided facilitation throughout it.
And having hosted a couple of Q&As for in-theater screenings, you're absolutely right. Getting them started is always the hardest part.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for saying that, Tom. It's really important.
But
A lot of Hoovie is actually, you know, sparked from my life experience as a very introverted person. You know, hence why I like small groups. I find it hard to facilitate discussions like a lot of people, you know, and so it's like it's solving problems that I've faced all my life through this platform using arts and culture. So
when you're not alone, and I think a lot of people are going to really embrace this idea, and me included. Don't be surprised if you see my name setting up at some point soon.
There's a screening. It's actually on my birthday on Thursday of the CEO of Bucha Brew, which is a really amazing kombucha company. She's hosting a screening about a documentary film about this like female inventor woman. Yeah. Anyways, it's gonna be a great group of people if you're free on Thursday.
I'll see what I can do. Absolutely.
And then in 2 weeks' time, we have another really cool one with another BC brand called Ecologist, which is this like ethically minded, sustainable clothing brand. And that's going to be super cool because it's a short film. And so it's about a 10 to 13, I think it's a 13-minute short film that was produced by Ecologist because they have all these really cool, evocative, thought-provoking little beautiful films shot in BC. But we're going to create a 90-minute event from it where we're going to have, you know, it's going to have like a little bit of presented content from Ecologist. There's going to be a Q&A with the director after the film. There's going to be several breakout groups, like from all the attendees. We're probably anticipating 100 people. So we'll break them out into groups and then we'll give them thought prompt questions so they can talk about it, come back. And then, so it's going to be a really kind of exciting, awesome event and all done online, anchored through a great film. And so, so these are the kinds of innovations that we're doing now on the enterprise side, and we will be bringing forward to us coming in the new year.
Well, that's a fun thing, and I can't wait to see what the future holds. Thank you both again for the time.
Thank you. Thanks,
Bye,
David. Bye. Bye.
Bye.